Mr. Niels Frost from Schneider Electric. He's a global product manager. And today, Niels Frost will present us about what is DKIM, what is the DCIM tools, what is that, and how can DKIM or DCIM tools be used for data center operations? What are the possibilities, and what kind of challenges will there be? Just to say before we get started with the presentation, there's also an agenda we have today. First, I will say something about a short introduction to why DCIM or DKIM is important. And we will then jump into the presentation, and we will have about 15 minutes of Q&A after the presentation from Mr. Niels Frost. And also, if you have some questions during the presentation from Mr. Niels Frost, please put in your questions in the chat, and then we will take it in the Q&A after the presentation. The topic today, DCIM, is very important, and actually we just made a survey in the SETI project from our Portuguese partners. Here we have all the partners listed up, and our Portuguese partner was responsible for doing a survey and qualitative interviews with 41 companies and also 27 qualitative interviews. And actually what the conclusions from this survey actually showed was that the industry of the data center industry in Europe actually are looking out for people who are actually having a knowledge about DCIM tools and DCIM operations. And that's actually also quite interesting related to the topic of today, and resonates well what Mr. Niels Frost will present today. And we could see that closing the IT infrastructure gap is also something that is an area where competences are needed, that IT professionals must understand what the physical consequences of software deployments are. And also, for example, high-density AI clusters will immediately impact UPS loading and cooling redundancy. And so there is a need for competences in this area, data center infrastructure management. And what you could see that we will now hear about what is DKIM and how could it be used. And I also know Mr. Niels Frost coming up. We will have a presentation and also a demo that presents what the DKIM is in reality. So welcome to Mr. Niels Frost. We are happy to see you there. Let's see if we can get you on the screen.
Yep. Am I going through all right now?
We still need to see your presentation.
Good. Give me a second. I'll just start everything here.
And if there is any questions regarding this presentation, I know that we have a bit time at the end of the slides to have this Q&A. So just go ahead and put your questions in the chat.
Okay, well, first off, thank you for taking your time to listening a bit to what I have to say. I have a short agenda for you. It's a bit about who I am, who Schneider Electric is, what DCIM is, and then we'll demo the tool that I'm product manager for. I'll talk a bit about the other products we have in the portfolio in Schneider and how all of it ties together. And then as Katrine mentioned, by then we'll have a bit of a Q&A, so you can feel free to ask all the questions you want. Also, if there's anything during the presentation, I'd much rather have the questions there when it's fresh in memory, because I've hit the age where some things need a bit of a jolt. So yes, first off, well, my name is Niels Frost. I'm located near a town in Denmark called Horsens, but I'm working out of the Schneider Electric R&D site in Kolding. My background for ending up with DCIM tools and working in the data center area is that I've worked a long time in the Danish Defense Department called Forsvaret, where I worked on the ground, so to speak. Then I've worked at Salling Group for multiple years and Deloitte, mainly in IT operations. So bridging the gap between the business and the IT world. The company I'm working for now, Schneider Electric, it's a French-based company. It's a global leader in management and energy management and industrial automation. It's fancy words for saying everything that happens from the electricity gets created and until it's coming out of the outlet. Schneider Electric has the possibility to assist with. It's a global company, so we have 100 countries we are spread around. It's 160,000 employees. Not all of them are working on data centers, but a lot is moving into that area now. The Schneider mission, well, basically electricity is the name of the game, and we're seeing an increased need of getting data-driven about electricity, and that's in all areas of work. Today we're narrowing down on data centers, but it's across the board where grids are being increasingly digitized and automized and optimized as well. So it is a really exciting area to be working in, and can only stress out the importance of going in that direction. So data center infrastructure management. Well, it's basically the software that we're using to bridge the gap between IT and facility management. Because there's a lot of hardware in data centers, but we also need to know how it's operating, how we can optimize it. When, to Lars's point before, when we see AI factories moving on to the UPS, or that load is just spiking, and if we have no monitoring on that, it'll impact our uptime, and uptime is key in this area. So we need to manage it properly. So basically, monitoring and managing every little bit in the data center, and then optimizing it with all the data we are gathering. And the optimization with data is where there's a lot of stuff happening right now, because monitoring is one thing, but utilizing and capitalizing on that data and really bridging the gap and increasing the uptime, and decreasing cost is key in running an efficient data center. Sorry, we'll just move to the software now. And if there's any questions, Lars, can you maybe assist, because I cannot see the chat? Okay, so this is where we start our intro into the software. We're trying to capitalize a lot on user experience insights, where we are building all of this in tandem with data center operators. So there's a lot of gathering knowledge from the operators, inviting them in to test it, and ensuring that we have the correct stability, we have the correct understanding of what their context is, what the area is they are working in. But managing a data center, all of it starts with us having done what's called a device discovery, which is basically we have a piece of software running on the customer's own platform. And then we can discover devices based on IP addresses, and doing that in multiple ranges, and ensuring we can see what devices is on the network. Once we have all that information, we then push it to the cloud where this software is running. We also have an on-prem version of it. There's a need for both in the world we're living in now, where we have a lot of governments and defense departments, banks as well, preferring to stay off grid, so to speak, where they can then ensure there's nothing leaving the data center, but that also diminishes the amount of insights they can capitalize on. The good thing about this SaaS-based solution is the scalability is a lot easier. So if you are growing, we have customers who are growing 33% year on year, and that's also with the amount of assets they have in the system. But once this discovery has been done, then all of that information, all the IP addresses, is then ingested into our application, where we can then start doing monitoring and management on it, and also the insights. We had an example with a customer who, a US-based customer who did device discovery. They were expecting around 400 to 500 devices, but they actually had 700 devices. And that really showcases the need for doing this a bit more structured. One of our biggest competitors historically has actually been an Excel sheet where they've managed stuff in, and then doing web-based monitoring where they log into each specific device to ensure that the operations are running as they should. But when you're moving into the segment where you have 500 plus devices, just maintaining software or what's it called, firmware on those can be a daunting task. So we're providing them the possibility to do that from a centralized location as well. And in the world we're living in right now, staying up to date on firmware is really important, especially from security level and performance level. Security concerns are one of the main drivers, especially in Europe, due to the NIS2 compliance being enacted. And that has hit a lot of operators. But again, we're trying to provide them solutions. But a basic understanding of IT security is not a bad thing to invest time in right now. 1 second. Once we've done all this management of the device discovery, we do want to move into this monitoring area of our portfolio of our software. Again, this is the cloud-based environment we're running in. A lot of the times, the data center operators work on a device level approach where they are looking at how my device is looking. Are they online, offline? That's what you're seeing in this. Is there a current alarm on them? What location is it in? All of these insights is something that they really value to enable to ensure the stability of operations that is needed. When we've tried to enhance the usage in here and the ease of bridging the gap between old operators and new operators, as in most other older IT disciplines, a lot of the operators are getting close to retirement age. So we're seeing the average age decreasing substantially, but that also enhances the need for us to provide good UX, good UI because the younger generation, which I consider myself part of, it's not always true, but I do. But they rely a lot on visuals, where the older generation was maybe more inclined to this table view we have here. But when we move into the device level, there's a plethora of information that is needed to be a good operator. Stuff like, is this UPS on battery? How's the battery replacement status looking? Is the battery temp within the ranges we predefined? Do we have any active alarms? This is one of the areas of the system where we are capitalizing a lot on AI, because this is a development system. So we have a lot of stuff happening that's usually not the case. If that's the case, then there's definitely operations improvements that can be made. But as an example here, we have multiple alarms. We are utilizing an LLM to ingest all that information into, and then summarizing it for speedy execution on operations concerns. You can see this specific UPS in our development environment has experienced 858 communications alerts. And understanding how to handle a communication alert is pretty important, because is it something in your network? Is it actual facility that has gone offline? What is going on here? And then being able to get an easy, quick overview and forwarding that information. Because you might be the operator, but it's not. If you're in a larger corporation, it might not be you handling the actual facility stuff. And if it's facilities that need to act on it, well, you need to forward that information to facility. And how do you do that in a proper manner? There's several ways we can do that in our system, both with APIs and webhooks and email-based alarm notification. When we've looked at the device level, we can also move into the alarm level, where we see a lot of stuff where we are trying to capitalize on giving you an active overview, but also the historical insights into what has actually happened in your system. Is there in your portfolio of equipment? Is there anything you need to address? This, especially with one of our biggest customers who are running data centers all across US, small cabin-sized data centers, closet-sized, but they are also they are running it locally in US. They have the monitoring going on by our SaaS-based cloud platform, so we can push it to the Indian operations teams that then notifies the US management on it. So the 24/7 monitoring is happening out of India. So this again means that they need to be a bit more online than and cannot go for an on-prem solution. But in here, we give them the possibility to also, again, look at the history, alarm history, configure default thresholds to ensure that they get the stuff they need for their specific data center to ensure proper operations. There might be caveats as to what they have. And we're not only monitoring Schneider devices in here, we're monitoring also third-party devices. I think we cover about 40,000 different device types right now in the DSIM space. One of our newer insights into this has been, well, if we are working with bigger rooms, it would make sense for us to capitalize on 3D views. We have another product that's really good at this called IT Advisor. But for alarm-based and quick monitoring, 3D also makes sense, not only for creating digital twins and asset management, but in this case, we use it for temperature monitoring. So you can see, well, is there any specific area of my data center that's an issue? I also have humidity overlays. As most of you know, IT equipment and humidity is not really, they don't work that well together. So if you see a spike in this, I might need to act on it. And when you're looking at more than 2-3 racks, looking in a table view kind of can become daunting at best. But we're, again, working closely with the operators to ensure maximum visualization, maximum operation speed. We also have the possibility to do this where you can show alarms on each rack. But all of this is tying into the last bit of our system, which is basically this insights. A lot of these insights, especially on security level, is something you'll need to report further on in your usually you need to report further on in the company you would be working at, because updating and being compliant with security is paramount, especially in Europe, where we have very high regulations, but very good regulations about this. So we are spending a lot of time investigating into on the firmware level of the NMCs, the network management cards. How are we compliant? Is there any places we need to invest time? Is there anything that needs to be updated? Is there anything that we cannot update? And that's where, instead of the users having to sift through 10,000 data points, we are ingesting all of it into a standardized reporting schema. That is also something you can download. So you can then forward it to the rest of the organization to put an emphasis on, well, we have a bridge here we need to cover, or bridge a gap between what is actually happened and what is ongoing. This is something that you'll most likely end up having to talk with. Close to 1.1. Give me a second. This is most likely something you'll have to report further on in the organization to ensure you are compliant with everything. And for reporting purposes, especially with NIS2 in EU, if you're one of those entities that needs to report on it, it's very nice that you actually can get it automized instead of having to sift through all the data points yourself. And I think we'll be back in a second here. Sorry about that. Yes. Okay, so that was from this reporting perspective on security. Two other areas that I would like to highlight here is, of course, the sustainability part of it. In Schneider, we pride ourselves on being one of the most sustainable companies in the world. This is an overview of how your power utilization effectiveness is on your current operations. We're enhancing this with also carbon utilization effectiveness. So it's again to capitalize or provide the end user, the operator, with easier reporting metrics, easier carbon reporting, so you do not have to gather up multiple data points yourself. It's automated, and you can get it as a report. We also have the possibility of doing a UPS assessment. This is basically us utilizing all of the insights from Schneider into looking at the UPS, how much load has it been on, how much time has it been on battery, how old is it, and then we give the operator the possibility to see, is it something I might need to replace. You can see here we have one UPS that is up for replacement. It's 14.7 years old, so well, it makes sense. The battery is rather new, but the rest of the parts in the UPS is something we need to investigate into. So instead of me having to go out and manually do it on each UPS, I can then sit in a nice cozy office and look at my overview, and then dispatch maybe a technician or whoever, or just request a completely new quote on this to ensure maximum uptime and in the operations. We also spend a lot of time on our asset management story, which is basically ensuring services, warranties. A lot of times when you buy a new UPS, there's of course the service contract on it, and you want to ensure that it's running as long as possible. So we're doing an extended service contracts, but the user just wants to know if they are covered or not. So we're trying to give them these insights. Of course, we only have as much data as we can access from Schneider, but we're displaying that again for an easy overview to ensure proper alignment on, well, how's next year's budget looking? How am I supposed to cover the gap between not covered and covered? Is there any? Do I need to do some prioritization? Should I go for new 3-phase UPSs, or can I cover this with single-phase UPSs? Again, a lot of this is just managing the data points, understanding the data points, and then pushing them to the end user. And this is, it sounds easy, but it's not, because there's, I think we have 2,000 different customers on this product, and there's 2,000 different opinions on how to do stuff. Of course, we also have the possibility to let the users know how they're looking for warranties. Again, if you have a device not under warranty, there is a potential risk with a higher chance of it failing, and more load on my support flow if I'm not covered. So providing these insights also makes it a lot easier for end users to ensure good operations in the data center in all areas of whatever they need. We are actually right now working with, we have a EU-based customer, a large hotel chain. I think they have like 1,500 different devices, and they use this product called IT Expert as their main driver to ensure that they are compliant with the warranties and services. They investigated prior to getting this operations or this application up and running, that they don't really have a centralized location of all those insights. So once they did the installation and got the discovery done, they realized, well, there's a lot of stuff here that's not under services, not under service. It's not covered by warranties. We need to investigate how we can then continue to ensure operations and not blow the budget. So that those insights made them able to do from my perspective, really good plan on how they did replacements with 25% per year over a 4-year period, and not blowing their complete budget in 1 year and then not being able to do unforeseen stuff in year 2. And understanding this large value chain is just really important, because it's not just maintaining one UPS, it's maintaining a plethora of different devices and ensuring the stability in the data center is in place. And it is the main one is well, how's my uptime looking? So if you can justify that one, you're really good. So we've also tried to cover the gap there by providing this UPS downtime report. It's basically showing you how much you've when you're working in operations, you usually get punished for doing good operations, because then you're doing good. So we can just slash 10% of the budget next year. but sustaining that budget is what might be able to ensure that you have the good operations. So it's too expensive to cut the 10% on operations, because that will give you an incident, and that incident might cost you a 10% on top line, and that impacts your bottom line as well. And then all of a sudden, the 10% operations was not really a good investment of resources and time by doing that cut in the budget. So we've tried to accommodate that by also showcasing how much UPS downtime have you prevented by doing good maintenance here with this report. And all of this information is something we need to make sure that we can then export to different, might be as a CSV file or as a PDF or something where we're pushing it as webhooks or APIs. Again, to ensure that you can forward the information to whoever is the decision maker, if it's not yourself, or whoever needs to have some data to act on. Yeah, I think I'll showcase. Yes, then we have, of course, we are trying to be as cutting edge as possible. So like all other good companies, we're investing a lot of time into AI, and not just for AI's sake. We are trying to, or we really want to close the gap between value-driven AI and not as good implementation. So what we've developed here in tandem with one of our biggest customers as pilot user on it, and then we've just rolled it out as a public beta, is a chat functionality where we are providing you the possibility to ask the questions directly to an LLM that then goes into a backend, fetches all the data, and then pushes it to you. So you do not need to navigate as much in the system to find whatever might be hiccups you need to handle. So as an example, you see here, I asked it, what's the average temp? It shows me the average temperature is 24.5 degrees. Well, I wanted to do some webhook integrations into, if I was using a different support system, it shows me, it gathers up all that information from our help center, and then it just is ingested directly into the end user's hands, so they can do the customizations they need for their IT landscape. And here's a comprehensive guide on how we do that, and of course with hyperlinks to ensure it. I can then also, I wanted to know what my highest temperature was. It gives me the specific temperature, what time it happened, and what device it happened on. So I can see it's in NAM, it's in Foxborough, it's near Boston, and the device name here. So instead of me sitting in Denmark and then having no possibility to act on it, I can now forward that information to the operator who might be working on that specific rack, and ensure that they then go out and check the rack and see what's actually happening here. I think that's all I had for system demo. It's just brief insights. I don't know if we have a few questions, maybe.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Niels. Thank you for the presentation and all the insights about the DKIM platform. Yes, we have at least one question here. I can see an unknown user. Question is, does the DKIM tool provide a means to report on business impact in case of an asset fails, performance not meeting required SLAs?
No, not right now. We're working actively on getting that. The problem with doing that is it depends a lot on the business you're working with, right? We're trying to provide them the tools to calculate that on their end, because we do not know their revenue, we do not know their bottom line, we do not know their margins. But all of this is something where we can assist them with how much downtime did you actually have with it. If it was a UPS score that's, oh, it's this one that was covered in the UPS score and the downtime has been X amount of minutes. We also have comprehensive analysis tools you can use for that, but it's providing the information for the end user to gather all these insights. But it's a very good question, and it's very relevant in this area, because it's basically, it's what we have to justify why we are here, right? Yeah. Because it's just an overhead if everything is running smoothly, but if it's not running smoothly, you're seeing the impacts that you're mentioning here. But what I can tell you is, one of the companies I've worked in is that where we did not have UPSs on all of our IT equipment, and it was a 1 hour impact in one of the areas. It kind of screwed an entire year because that is enough for, due to such low margins, that was enough for us to spend all of it. So yeah, but very good question.
Yeah, and there's another question from the chat. Linda Hernandez is writing, I'm looking into how Schneider Electric handles the physical to digital link in data centers. Do you currently have a native RFID or smart identification solution for real-time asset tracking within your DKIM? Or is that a gap you typically fill through third-party hardware partnerships?
Oh, that's something we're trying to. We already have something with the insights we have now with the device discovery working the way it has. Anything within SNMP v1, SNMP v3, Modbus protocol, we can monitor. We also have the capabilities to do what's called Redfish, REST APIs. Of course, we are continuously enhancing this. We do see an increase in the amount of asset management that's needed from users, not only in the historically hardcore DSIM equipment, but also rack level equipment, rack PDUs, servers, switches, all of this. And we're trying to close the gap a little bit between having to use 3 or 4 different tools, because as an operator, if you can get one single source of truth, that's what you want, instead of having to figure out the truth between 3 to 4, 5, 6 different systems. So at least that's where we see the pendulum swinging in our area.
Yeah, thank you, Niels. And Connor, Lovely.
Hi, Niels. How are you? Thank you very much for the presentation. It looks like very, very comprehensive software. But I suppose we all know, working in data centers, that there's everything's tied together, so you need to be able to see everything all in one place, which is what you've done there. It's great. I wanted to ask you a question and to speak to the students on it, because it's something that I've come across as we've been involved in this project, that there's a huge amount of people going to retire from the industry in the next 10 years or so. And one of the things, one of the main functions of this project is to encourage students to get into the industry and to show them what the prospects are. And there's great prospects, I think, for advancement over the years as these older people retire, and there's going to be a big vacuum pulling people up the ladder. And to me, it seems like an ideal opportunity for graduates right now to consider this industry. So I presume you'd agree with that. You might want to talk on that first of all.
So my IT operations days, I'll try and link parallels to that. I was working with SAP, and for those of you who do not know SAP, it's an ERP system. It's a very old school approach, German-built, a very good ERP system, very comprehensive and very technical. So it has a lot of the same caveats as data centers does, because there's just so much hardcore knowledge you need. And I was a young guy in that area because I was only around 30 at that point. I'm still a young guy, but not as young. And it's exactly the same we're seeing in the data center area, where a lot of the people on the floor, and a lot of the people in the management are people who were there from the beginning, when internet kind of surfaced in the 2000s. Everything was just scaling, and they learned a lot of it by doing a lot of mistakes, but also learning a lot from those mistakes. And I think that's where you're covering this gap now. We do not need to make all those mistakes, but we need all those learnings. And those guys are getting closer to retirement, to your point, Connor. And it is basically just there's been an increase in the amount of younger people from my generation and younger we all want to work cloud, we want to work front end, we want everything to be fine and pretty. But in the end of the day, everything is running on hardware somewhere. And if you get insights into that hardware, you have the golden ticket in my book, because it's just gonna explode. An AI factory sounds fine and dandy, but by the end of the day, it's just GPUs running, right? So we need someone to make sure that they can maintain those GPUs. We need someone to understand how the backup systems for those GPUs are working. How are we doing redundancies for those GPUs? What do we need to look for in redundancy tracking? All of these insights, and it is there's a huge lack of skills, and especially in 3 to 4 years when they're getting closer to retirement and hitting that retirement age. I think I read a survey somewhere, I don't know if it's accurate, but for SAP professionals in that area that I was working in, it was the retirement age was, or the average age was 55 4 years ago, and they've had troubles covering that. And my experience in data centers are telling me that it's even worse here. So I think it's the area to go for. And even if we then see, we might see the curve flattening a bit on AI stuff. I don't think we'll see that in the next 5 to 10 years. But even if we see that, there's just a huge backlog of stuff where we do not have the next generation up and coming. We do not have the next insights. And understanding both how software works and how hardware works and the link between, that's really, really important, because there's most people they understand how to build software. They do not understand what problems are we solving out there in the real life. And so I think, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's good. I think, as I said, I was speaking to the students that it's a great opportunity. This survey I heard was that 40% of data center staff are going to retire in the next 10 years. That's huge. And and obviously the increase in requirement going forward, forgetting about who's retiring, the industry is hugely expanding anyway. So there's great opportunities there. And at the end of the day, the skills are quite transferable as well. A lot of it is mission critical stuff. So
yes.
So it's certainly, and our problem is that we don't think students know about the industry, or they have a very negative impression. So we were trying to change that.
Of course, I understand that. It is. I think a lot has happened over the past 25 years in that industry. So and again, I think you guys are doing the correct thing by talking to people working in the data centers and the people supporting the data centers.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the customers we have from data centers specifically, they are really worried about this skills gap they're seeing. Of course, AI can cover some of it, but you still need someone to understand the bits and bytes and how to facilitate the AI. Because it's still an end user sitting there.
Thank you. We have a new question popping up at the chat on the user. Looking at the OT ICS security vulnerability impact, what steps are put in place during the device discovery phase to avoid a potential device discovery breach? That's the question.
I can't divulge all of our everything that we are doing, but of course, it's very important that we closely monitor how we are showcasing information, and we do this on this specific tool that I just showed you. We have an ISO 27001 certificate that we're maintaining. So we have an ISMS where we're doing really comprehensive. Proper secure development from the beginning, and we're being audited several times a year, ensuring we are meeting industry standards, doing constant security threat assessments on everything. We only work with SOC 2 or ISO compliant platforms. We work closely to ensure that that our security reporting is feeding into what the end users' needs are, and ensure a proper secure development in that area. So, it's a hot topic, but it's a very tough topic as well, because security is you want to get to a secure state, but you do not want to overinvest, because that's just stuff you're not then getting a good return of investment on. So it's I don't know if that covers the question. I hope it does.
At least you gave some inputs to answer the question. In following that path, I would like to ask you. You also mentioned ISO standards and so on, and that's also what we are discussing in the CETSA project. In your experience and opinion, what level of knowledge about the standards should we give to the students?
From my perspective, IT security is a bit like getting a driver's license, right? Where you need to know the framework, so that when you get out there and encounter business, you understand how the framework fits into that. Because when you're moving into business, it's always everything revolves around how the money is flowing around. So understanding the framework and how that can then fit into how the money is flowing around and how you can optimize that, I think that's very important. But that requires you understanding the framework in the first place. So a basic understanding of these ISO standards is really key, because then you need to, when you get out there, you need to do interpretations on how can we then interpret this framework into the business. Because if you come in and try to implement a framework straight out of the textbooks, that will never work. And as far as I understand, my experience tells me, all of those textbooks also really emphasizes that you need to understand the framework so you can implement it in the way that is needed. So it's not a one-to-one, but you cannot bend the framework in the places you need to bend it if you do not understand it. I hope, is that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and it also resonates very well with the discussions we have at our schools and universities, and that we need a pragmatic approach to apply the knowledge from the standards. And one of the things we will try to do is to integrate the standards in some of the exercises, the exchanges where we're doing with students in cross-disciplinary teams. So in that sense, try to bridge the gap between facility and IT mindsets. And talking about that, what's your experience? You mentioned in the presentation that this tool and the mindset connected to use of DKIM tools is can bridge the gap between facility and IT. What's your experience with that?
My experience is it's always fun working in these areas because it sounds like it's really hardcore knowledge, all of it. And it is. There's a lot of hardcore knowledge. But understanding that knowledge and then facilitating that so everyone else understands your perspective is where it gets really tricky, because then it's no longer bits and bytes. It's actual people making decisions, and conveying that can be really, really hard. So we're seeing, and that again, it depends a lot on the business you're heading into. That's why we're trying with the tools we built and started to make them as customizable as needed and as open source as needed, because we can never understand fully how a business framework is, but we need to ensure that we fit into their operations and can enhance their operations. Otherwise, they'll just move on to the competitor. So again, I think it's the same methodical approach as when you're doing ISO work, doing framework work, is understanding your part of the puzzle, how you fit into the bigger puzzle, and then how you can optimize that your specific puzzle piece to make the rest of them look better. And if you understand, but that still requires you to have a good knowledge base. Otherwise, you cannot diverge in those conversations. You cannot. It'll be hard to understand you can come from IT and say, well, we can see network is working as it should, so it's something in buildings. And then buildings, if you just say that and then cut it short, then buildings will most likely just be a bit pissed and say, well, we can see something on your network, go sort it out. But it's when you meet with good intentions and close that knowledge gap, and that's when the higher learnings, the higher operations and enhancements really happen. So I think that's, yeah. It sounds like I don't value all the hard learnings you're doing in school. I really do, because I think all those hard learnings in school is what will enable you to do all the soft learnings when you get out into the environment of business. And it is a bit cutthroat out here at times.
Yeah, thank you. Another question from the chat is just arrived. The question is, does the recently adopted CRA, which is Cyber Resilience Act, does it drive the adoption of DKIM exploitation?
Yes, it does. It really does. We saw a spike also when NIS2 was implemented or was opened up for from EU. So it really does. And we need to remember, in the news, EU is sometimes projected as a small market compared to some of the others, and it is, but it's still a big market. So all of the international players are also adopting into how do we then fit into the CIA, because they do not want to lose the European approach. And the insights that EU has done into general of cyber resilience is really something that's needed everywhere. Understanding these, I wouldn't call them buzzwords, but shifts in the market, especially into cybersecurity, is really important. And we're seeing this if we take an example from Denmark, where one of the biggest retailers in Denmark just opened up for 50, what do they call them, emergency stores. So in case that the grid breaks down, in case that nothing's working, you still have 50 strategically placed convenience stores all over Denmark, where you can go and get your milk, you can go and get your supplies so the society is still functioning. Because if we see a blackout of 24 hours in Denmark, a lot of people are not prepared, and but that also requires the businesses to understand that, and they are moving into that. And that enhances the need for platforms that support these kind of things, the ISO standards, the NIS2 standards, and all of those standards are based off the framework from the NIS from the ISO standards. So again, back to the frameworks, it's really good to understand the basics so you can then move further into the expert areas.
Yeah. I got a question from one of the students when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. The question was, is the DKIM platform facilitating predictive maintenance tools?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Our UPS score is one of them. I think I might have something. But our UPS score is one of those predictive analytics where it's like the first step. Predictive analytics is a multi-step approach for you to get to the nirvana state. But the UPS score is basically, well, I understand how it's looking, and then I can do some predictive stuff on it. We are enhancing that, of course, by providing more intelligence. We're investing time into anomaly detections, root cause analysis. So it's done as an automated part of the system, and then you can just look at what anomalies do I have on, let's say I have 15 devices, I have anomalies on 2 of them. They have not shown up with a decrease in UPS score. Well, there might be something I need to investigate. Next time I'm around that location, I'll go and investigate that. So we are actively working into that to enhance the usability of the platform.
Okay, thank you. I know another question which popped up from the students is what could a student do to get a job in the industry? What are your take on that? What kind of a mindset and approach should a student, no matter whether the student is a facility or an IT student, what kind of approach should the student choose if he or she wants to have a job in the data center industry?
That's a good question. I can say what I did because it's I think it's a hard one to cover this. I don't think there's one solution to fit them all. I think what I did is that I got some knowledge into different areas of business, and that has enabled me to move into this. But I think a good place to start is, well, watch these webinars to get a good broad understanding of what a different business is working with in this data center area. And then I think not being afraid to embrace the old school disciplines, like understanding how hardware works is a good place to start. Understanding basically how computer is functioning, because a lot of those mechanics is I mean, I've always built my own PCs when I had the time for it, and all of that understanding. And then I worked in sales operations in a large convenience store, but that also had a lot of servers and racks, and all of this combined has given me the insights into, well, this is basically how a data center is working. This is how a server is working. This is what I need to monitor and stuff. This is if my wattage is not correct on the power supply, well, what impact does it have downstream then? And I think understanding that it requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of hours. It's always easy to see on LinkedIn and on Facebook or Instagram, wherever you get your inspiration for what career you're going to choose. It's always easy to see those successful stories being posted. But you're just forgetting that 99% of the work is done beforehand, and it's not the fun parts of it. There's a lot of learnings going on. There's a lot of mistakes being made, but learning from those mistakes is what will enable you to get there. And then I'd say reach out to the companies directly and hear, well, do you have internships? Do you have graduate programs? What kind of possibilities do I have? Do I know anyone working in that company that can help give me maybe it's just a 5-minute talk with a manager that might maybe 1 year down the line has an opening for me. If you know people in the operations departments in the bigger companies, all of those guys have operations going on, and it's the same basic principles. Yeah, I know it's not I don't have the guide for it, but I've just to put it into perspective, I've been working with DSIM tools for 7 months now. Prior to that, I worked for 18 years in different business units all around different companies in order for me to land this job, right? But it's my understanding of how everything is running, the complete picture that enables me to understand this. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Niels, for this very thoughtful answer to a not very easy question. I know, but I think you made a lot of you had a lot of insights on your own, based on your own experience, and I think that's also has a big value to hear about how did you do it to get into this industry. So thank you very much. I think we don't have any more questions from the chat, and I can see my colleagues maybe don't have either more questions. So we are at the time where we have to finish, and say a big thank you to you, Niels, and for your presentation about this field of DKIM and also the perspectives, and also I also think we had a lot of interesting questions related to the DKIM use and so on, and also the kind of competences needed to work with this area. That also sets it also gives us some perspectives when we are dealing with developing joint courses and exchanges in the CETSET project in the coming years. So thank you very much, Niels, for your insights, and we are happy to that. So thank you. We are ending now, and we also will have a webinar coming up in April. We are still working on the exact date and the presenter, but we will promote it on the CETSET.eu website, so you can see it there. So, and also this webinar will also pop up at the CETSET.eu webinar, so you can see it there. So thank you very much.